Hello, everyone. This is the Mind of Lilith, and thank you for joining me today. I hope you're all doing well. So, today I wanted to quickly share my thoughts about the Katt Williams interview that he did with Shannon Sharpe a few days ago that has since gone super duper viral. I think is at 30 million views, something like that, within less than a week. I mean, it's even bigger than Charleston White and what's that guy's name? Oh, Cam Newton, yes. Charleston White, Cam Newton, that went viral too, but this was super duper viral. And I would not be surprised if this particular podcast was pushed by the algorithm for the sake of distracting the general public from what's going on in the political space as far as elections are going, as far as this war in Gaza, as far as the socioeconomic situation in the United States. I wouldn't be surprised if this was just another bread and circuses moment that was propagated by the powers that be. But with that said, congrats to Shannon Sharpe for this successful viral moment on his platform. Okay. With that said, I decided to watch this interview because of the clips that I was seeing on social media. I've been really busy the past several days, just finishing up orders, getting the yearly readings done, working on my book, doing other work. It's been a lot of chaos. So I haven't had much time to delve into social media as I usually do. And I was watching the random clips. He was talking about different celebrities and the gatekeepers and so on and so forth. So I decided to watch this episode with Katt Williams and Shannon Sharpe, thinking that it would be entertaining, it would be comical, be funny, it would be comic relief, whatever. And it was not that for me. For some reason, I did not enjoy this as much as I thought I would. And it's not because Katt Williams is not an entertaining individual. It's not because he's not intelligent at all. He's very smart. I think it was difficult for me to enjoy this podcast because Katt Williams, to me, looks like he's being weighed down by something heavy energetically. I don't know if it's stress. I don't know if it's fatigue. I don't know if it's depression. I don't know if he's being haunted by memories. I have no idea. But he feels heavy when he's talking. At one point, Shannon Sharpe brought up his childhood, and Katt Williams talked about being raised Jehovah's Witness, how he was a voracious reader. He would read 10 books a day. He was like a low-key genius, and I don't disbelieve him when it comes to that. I think that Katt Williams is extremely intelligent. Now, I did take a look at his natal chart, and he has the aspects for a genius. He has Mercury in Leo combust the Sun in Virgo conjunct Venus in Virgo. So not only is he highly intelligent, he also has a gift or a knack for pattern recognition, which is one of the characteristics of a so-called genius. Whether you're a genius in computer science, a genius in art, or you're a genius in music or dance or whatever, pattern recognition is one of the hallmarks of a genius, okay? Now, with that said, there are some other challenging aspects in his chart that I'm going to discuss briefly. This is not going to be a full chart analysis, but I'm just going to substantiate what I was feeling when I was watching this interview with what I can see in his natal chart, okay? So anyway, at some point, Katt talked about him being raised Jehovah's Witness, and he had to leave home because he was being abused by his father. I did see that in his chart with this Saturn-Neptune opposition, which is someone who loses faith in a belief system, in their father, in an ideology, in whatever. And so he mentioned that he and his father got into a physical altercation. So throughout the interview, Katt Williams would make these like biblical references, these fundamentalist references. I remember watching him years ago go on this rant about American patriotism and the flag of the United States and him being a patriot and, 9/11 happening and us bombing Iraq. And it was very tone deaf and very fundamentalist. It sounded like he had no empathy for the innocent men, women, and children who were killed in the Middle East because of George Bush's lies. And then he made a comment about, I think, Miss Wanda, and he was saying something like he was like Israel bombing Gaza. He didn't say that verbatim. I don't know what he said verbatim, but he was implying that Miss Wanda was Gaza and he was Israel bombing her to smithereens because that's what you do when you're trying to neutralize an enemy. It's very tone deaf and very tacky. And I'm not saying this to attack him, but he sounds like someone who has been indoctrinated, heavily indoctrinated. And in order to indoctrinate someone, you have to first condition them for indoctrination. They have to go through a process of being broken down to be built back up. Similar to what happened to the slaves in America, to Black American slaves, the process of indoctrination was facilitated by the conditioning. So you had to put these people who were used to freedom in conditions where they would not only learn to accept their slavery, but they would think that it's a normal way of life. It was the way that it was supposed to be. You had to break them down to do that. And the process of breaking them down was, rape, brutality, abuse, murdering them. Like it was a lot that went on to condition the Black people to be prepped for slavery. While I was watching Katt Williams, my mind kept saying, oh my God, he's trying to break out of the conditioning, not the indoctrination per se, because you cannot indoctrinate without conditioning. He's trying to work through or fight through whatever conditioning he went through in order to be indoctrinated as a Jehovah's Witness. I think the conditioning that he went through as a child is what's making him so angry today. I'm not saying that his claims about the industry are not valid. I do believe in most of what he is saying, but he does exaggerate a lot, and I can see the propensity for telling white lies or misleading people with the Neptune square Mercury aspect in his chart. And Mercury is his sun sign's ruler, so it's also square his sun as well. Okay. And this aspect usually makes people susceptible to being deceived or deceiving others or deceiving themselves. I don't think that Katt Williams operates in the same paradigm as the rest of us, which makes him a genius. And I'm not saying us as if I'm normal too. I'm not normal either. Okay. A lot of us have quirks and we're a little bit, eccentric here and there. But for him, with this aspect in his chart, he really has a difficult time dealing with reality and fiction. And I don't think it's intentional. Some of it is, and some of it is not. Some of the misrepresentations is intentional, and some of it is not. I honestly feel like, and this is not to disparage him at all or to make light of any issues he has. He has some challenges, as most really intelligent, empathetic, and traumatized people do. But I think that he has created this alter ego that he steps into in order to feel normal and in order to deal with whatever has been tormenting him for a long time. I don't know if he's doing hard drugs. Again, I wouldn't be surprised with the Neptune square ascendant Mercury sun aspect that he has in his chart. I wouldn't be surprised at all. But somebody being, an addict or drugs does not invalidate the truth if he's telling the truth, right? People would say that, Katt Williams is on drugs to discredit him as a person altogether. And I don't think that is fair. I do think that he's telling the truth about certain things. However, when he mentioned the fact that he and his father got into this big fight, and he said his father said to him that he was not a virgin, and he said he was, my stomach just dropped. And I felt this sense of dread and sadness for him. I'm not going to say what that statement means to me. That's such a loaded statement when you say, my father said I wasn't a virgin, and I said I was. That's a very loaded statement, and I'm not going to unpack it because this is not the appropriate platform for that. But if what I am feeling is correct, it would make sense that he's going through so many challenges that he's like trying to fight through on a daily basis. He seems like he's at war with himself, not just the world, but with himself. Now, Katt Williams is known for being very generous to people, to comics, to friends. He's taken care of many people. And I'm not trying to say that Katt Williams is being generous because he's trying to obfuscate or hide something else or compensate for something else. But I would not be surprised. Now, I'm a very generous person. There are lots of generous people in the world who give because they're sympathetic, they're kind, and they want to help people. So I don't want to make it seem as if every time somebody does something good for somebody or every time somebody is, a generous person, they have ulterior motives. I'm not saying that. But in this case, I wouldn't be surprised if there was some balancing happening behind the scenes, as if he commits a sinful act, then he has to do something to repent for that sin. And that could be an act of generosity. It could be him buying someone a star on the Walk of Fame. It could be many things because he is someone who is cognizant of patterns and balance and karma and energy. So there's a very dark side here that we are not privy to. And it's, be honest, it's not our business. It's not our business what he's dealing with, as long as he's not hurting anybody else, as long as, he's not misrepresenting anyone. It's not our business what he's trying to work through. But I do commend him. I have a lot of respect for him trying to do the best that he can under the circumstances of maybe some mental health challenges, maybe some addiction issues, and compounded trauma that's obviously unresolved. He's trying to be the best version of himself that he can be. And, you know, Katt Williams has an ascendant in Leo and a sun in Virgo. I mentioned that earlier, I think. Jupiter is on his 10th house at this time. Now, it's going to be on his 10th house from his ascendant and his sun for the next year. So this is a time of great growth and expansion and popularity and increased interest in Katt Williams. However, we do have to contend with Uranus and Saturn being an aspect to Jupiter as well. Uranus is currently in Taurus, conjunct Jupiter, and Saturn will be square Jupiter within the next year or so. So this added fame and this renewed interest in his career and in his personality and in his life is going to come with some caveats. It's going to be a double-edged sword. People are going to become more curious about who he is and start digging into to see who he really is. I wouldn't be surprised at some point, if this situation becomes a curse. It's a gift and a curse because people are supporting him. Yeah, go Katt. But then with the Saturn, there's an added weight of responsibility attached to this. So it's kind of bittersweet because he's being vindicated in a sense. He has a lot of supporters backing him because of what he's done for them and so on. And the fact that they agree with what he's saying. Like, there are gatekeepers in Hollywood. There are people who are not as talented being put into positions of power and influence because they're willing to play the game. Okay. And in our community, we don't really respect that too much because the game is usually played against us. So there are Black people who are put in positions of power to make sure that we stay with the crumbs and the scraps. They usually put gatekeepers in place that are in support of whatever agenda that their bosses or their masses have in store for Black people, which is why the state of Black culture is what it is today, because the gatekeepers have sold us out. So Katt Williams has a point, which is why he's seen as a sort of this whistleblower in a sense. But I think there's another side to the situation that's not being addressed. Or I haven't heard it addressed. I haven't looked for it, and I really don't care what anybody else has to say about this. But there is some other stuff going on with him that he's not taking a personal accountability for. And he is smart enough to know how to talk shit. He's smart enough to know how to distract people, to divert people, to confuse people in a sense. He's very intelligent. He's not stupid. But this is one of the reasons why you have to read energy. And again, I'm not trying to attack him at all. I have so much empathy for him. And as I was watching him speak, I was thinking to myself, I hope he has people around him who actually love him. People really love him, who support him, who genuinely want what's best for him, not just users or yes men. I hope that's not the case. Because he seems like somebody who needs genuine love, but wouldn't know how to accept it anyway, because he was probably conditioned into believing that he didn't deserve it if he did not adhere to whatever indoctrination that his parents imposed upon him. So see this lack of self-love in his chart with Venus square Saturn aspect, which is usually expressed as someone who feels like they have to buy love or like they have to earn love because inherently they don't deserve it. There's something about them that's deeply flawed that makes them undeserving or unworthy of love. And that is a part of religious indoctrination as well, saying that you're going to go to hell if you're gay, or you're going to go to hell if you have sex before marriage, or you're going to go to hell if you are not a Jehovah's Witness, you are a Muslim instead. That is a part of it. So if he was trained that way as a child to believe that he was inherently flawed unless he was adhering to the tenets of the Jehovah's Witness faith, then that would manifest as him thinking that he had to repent for his sins by helping people, by being generous. And I'm not saying that he has ulterior motives. I'm saying that, I wouldn't be surprised if that was a part of the reason why he is so generous, is because he feels like he has to repent for his sins and his flaws. I can see these issues with love and affection in his chart, and I'm going to discuss that for my Stargazer members when I do the comprehensive chart analysis for him this week. When you're indoctrinated in a religious system, you're told that if you don't adhere to these principles, then you don't deserve love. You are flawed. You are a sinner. You've failed God. You're not good enough in a sense. And so I wouldn't be surprised if he had that complex, because he does have Venus square Saturn, which is the father opposing Neptune. Whatever happened with his father made him lose faith in God in a sense, but also made him feel like he was undeserving of love. He was not worthy of love. And he's in a very painful space. So I'm hoping that people give him some grace, even though he was firebombing everybody, calling people ugly. And I'm like, okay, Katt Williams was with, what's her name? Hazel E., who I don't think is unattractive per se, but a lot of people say that she is not as attractive as some of the women that he was ranking on, which I can agree. So I'm like, I do understand that in the industry, Black men are expected to have, or Black men expect to partner with exotic women who are not Black, not too Black looking. That is what is expected of them. That is what they have promoted. That is what they brag about. That's how they feel validated. You cannot argue against that point, that a lot of Black men have been conditioned into believing that non-Black beauty is a status symbol. It's a symbol of success. That is the way that they were conditioned as slaves. And that's the way that they feel today. So fine. He has a point when it comes to that. At the same time, he called like the big nose features ugly. And I don't think big noses are ugly in particular. He called Jonathan Majors ugly. I don't think he's ugly, because he has, larger features. That doesn't make a man ugly automatically. But at the same time, he's speaking out of both sides of his mouth. He's talking about the ugly white women that these men are being paired with because of colorism. But at the same time, he's using colorist, Eurocentric ideas of beauty to judge other Black people, right? There's a contradiction here. On the one hand, he's saying that these celebrities choose basic looking white women or light skinned women to be partners. But at the same time, he's making fun of people with large noses and big lips and what you would consider West African phenotypical features. That's a contradiction to me. I think that was a bit tasteless, because Shannon Sharpe looks like who he was talking about when he talked about ugly people. And I'm like, Shannon Sharpe is very attractive. Like, we have very narrow ideas of what beauty really is. That's a part of the conditioning I talked about earlier. The conditioning isn't just physical and mental. The slave masters and the white supremacists also told you what was attractive and what wasn't attractive. So they were conditioning your taste levels too, which is why you have so many of us out here acting a damn fool, acting like we're still on a plantation. So we have been indoctrinated by the media over the past 200 something years to believe that dark skin is not attractive, large noses are not attractive, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I can hear the contradictions in his language and in his frame of thought. And again, I want to give him a lot of grace because he has a lot of stuff going on that you could feel as he's talking. You can see his energy. His eyes are heavy. He kind of reminds me of Taraji Henson a little bit. Taraji has been, going around the media talking about how she's not being paid enough as a Black actress. And she looks tired. I remember up until a few years ago, like before she started the show Empire, she looked like she didn't age, or she hadn't aged for 20 years. But while she was filming Empire, it was like the light left her eyes. And I don't know if it was because she was working so hard. I think she was doing movies and the show. It was a bunch of stuff she was doing at the time. And so I figured she was exhausted, but she still looks the same way years later. And she looks fed up, depressed, dejected, and just over it. And Katt Williams looks the same way. It's the same energy of depression or sadness or heaviness, as if, life is weighing them down. And I really hope that they're both doing okay and they have a large support system to help them get through whatever they're going through now. So I'm going to give Katt Williams grace. I don't believe that he read 10 books a day. I do believe that he had a photographic memory. And so he was able to read large blocks of text at a time, which helped him to read faster. How do I know this? Because I've done the same as a kid. I used to have a photographic memory and I would read, 3 or 4 books a day because I would be able to just look at one paragraph and read all the words at once. And then the story would kind of unfold that way. And once you read so many books, you could identify the patterns in the storytelling to the point where you don't have to read every line. You could just read a paragraph and kind of figure out where it's going to go next, right? And so, yeah, that's, I do believe that he read a lot, like over 1,000 books a year, but not 3,000 a year, maybe 4 or 5 books a day, if that. The story of him hitchhiking to Florida as a 14-year-old by himself, I don't know. if I completely believe that story. I do believe that he left home. But the question I had was, did he leave by himself or was he escorted down there by somebody? I don't know. But that's a lot. He was a little man. He wasn't like he wasn't some 6 foot tall 15, 14-year-old kid. He was only 5'5" then. Going from Ohio to Florida at that age, just out here, what he was saying was not impossible, but it sounded like a story that he put together to cope with what happened. Like he prettied it up a little bit, made it sound nice, put a nice little bow in it. I don't think it was that glamorous, to be honest. I think it was a lot of stuff that was messy that involved that trekking from Ohio to Florida as that age. And again, I'm hoping that he gets help for whatever he's going through. And I'm hoping that this increased interest or this renewed interest in Katt Williams does not become a double-edged sword or an anchor for him. Because the way that the internet works, as soon as somebody gets their shine or gets some more shine, here comes the investigators, right? People doxing you and figuring out what's going on with you and so on and so forth. So he has a lot of stuff in his past, a lot of baggage, a lot of arrests, a lot of stuff that happened 10, 15 years ago that people have forgotten since then because he kind of went underground. Yes, I do believe he was being targeted by the industry because he was calling out the stuff that was going on back then that people are finally acknowledging now. I think he was being targeted, but also he has some stuff going on too that had nothing to do with him being targeted. He had some other challenges that he was going through. So hopefully he has people around him who genuinely love him and not just people who are less yes men who need him. I hope that he's not the type of person who needs to have control over everybody around him, who needs to be the smartest person in the room so that they can't clock his shit. Because that would not help him at all. We see what happened with Kanye West, right? These mutable signs are getting hit with this Neptune and Pisces transit hard. We see with Tamar going off her rocker a little bit, Christian Rock going off her rocker. We see this with Nicki Minaj acting weird. We saw this with Kanye West. Like, it's a lot of weird, confusing energy happening with the mutable signs because of this Neptune and Pisces transit. So this is hitting Katt pretty hard because he has a Neptune square Mercury aspect natally, and Mercury is his sun's ruler, and the sun is his chart ruler. So he's getting hit from all sides by this. And so, yeah, I'm not trying to attack him. I'm not trying to discredit what he was saying. All I was saying is that I did not enjoy it as much as I thought I would because I could see he was in a lot of pain. A lot of pain, a lot of torment, a lot of depression. He was hiding a lot. That's not anybody's business about what he's hiding as long as nobody's getting hurt. Let him do him. That's his business. But I could tell he was putting on a show. I think it was supposed to be like an authentic interview to find out what was happening in the industry and what was happening with him. But he turned into a performance and like a roasting session. And the roasting session was used to like hide some of his issues, right? And some of his exaggerations. And so, yeah, I'm hoping that, first of all, he finds a way to love himself because there was something that happened with his father that made him feel like he wasn't lovable. And he has Mars conjunct Moon. So he's also very angry with his mother for what happened to him or what happened between him and his father. So he's isolated. I can see he's alone. He may have people around him, but he's isolated. And what I mean by isolated is that I feel like he has people around him. He only has people around him that he can control. And if he can't control the situation or narrative, he starts jonesing on people. And that makes everybody happy. Hee ha ha. He's so funny. And he is. Katt is hilarious. He's very funny. I remember when he roasted Wanda years ago on the radio, and he's absolutely lethal with the words. He has a knack for communication and witty repartee. You can't catch him up when it comes to language. Not at all. And he's extremely psychic. Very intuitive, very empathic. And so this makes him sensitive to other people's energy. So he may have to isolate himself. He may have to use numbing substances to get through the day, to, deal with his trauma, to deal with the pressures of the industry, to deal with all the expectations on him. And he's still working through, he still hasn't resolved his trauma yet. He still hasn't resolved whatever deep-seated issues that he's been running from since he was 11, 12 years old. unfortunately, it seems like he's being haunted by certain things. He's haunted by the memories, he's haunted by the experiences, he's haunted by the loss of his home because he had to leave home as a child. He had to abandon his family in a sense, his mother, his siblings. I don't even know what's going on with his children. Again, it's not our business. That's not my business, but it's very strange. Most entertainers, they want to keep their personal lives private. So I do respect the fact that he doesn't want his family all out in the streets and all out on the social media and everything else. But um, he seems like somebody who's very controlling. And perhaps that's the reason why he's so successful because he runs a tight ship. People only say and do what he says. And that way they don't trip him up or he doesn't slip up. But yeah, I think that people are cheering and rallying behind Cat Williams because they don't really like the people he was talking about anyway. They don't particularly like Steve Harvey because of the way he treated his first two wives. They don't like Kevin Hart because of the way he treated his first wife. I don't know about Faison Love too much. I don't know why they would have beef with him, but they don't like the people that he is talking about anyway. So it's like, yeah, it's fair game, right? I mentioned this before about some Black people listening with their feelings instead of their ears. So I'm going to listen to you rank on this person because I don't like him anyway. But if I like the person, I'm going to call you out and say, nah, chill out, son. You're doing too much. You a hater. But if I don't like Steve Harvey, if I don't like Cedric the Entertainer, and I don't like Things I Love, you can do what you want. It's carte blanche, right? So yeah, that's a little bit funny. And I think Katt knows this. He's not an idiot. I do love the fact that Katt Williams wanted to honor Melba Moore. And so Katt Williams, he has this moral indignation thing going on. I don't want to say self-righteous, but it's a bit self-righteous, kind of like I don't want to say savior complex, because we know in Neptune, you deal with like this Christ figure, right? This person who believes in sacrificing themselves for a greater cause, with Neptune square Mercury or Neptune square the sun or the ascendant. And I'm going to bring up my favorite example, Whitney Houston. She had this aspect in her chart, and it was also affecting Bobby's chart. So she felt like it was her responsibility to save Bobby from his own foolishness. She sacrificed herself, in a sense, to save this man who really didn't deserve it. And so I think Katt has some of that in him as well because of the indoctrination, the religious indoctrination, but also I think he is a good person, but there was a bit of moral grandstanding there and some contradictions too. So with all that said, I'm hoping that Katt does not get caught up. I don't think he will though, because he's been famous for a long time. But I hope that he does not see this support as something that is permanent. The public is very fickle, and as soon as people find out about some of the things he did in his past, they could easily turn on him. All of this attention is kind of like a catch-22. It can be a gift and a curse if the public, who are fickle, finds out about things that he's done in the past that may not have been above board. He's not perfect. Nobody's perfect. I hope that people don't see him as a perfect guy. And I hope that they're not supporting him because they think he's perfect. I hope that they will continue to support him even if they find out that he's done imperfect things in the past, that he has flaws, that he's not some god or some Superman or some savior of the Black race. I hope that's not the case. What happens is when you put people on high horses, they tend to fall hard. So don't put him on a high horse to see him as a regular man. Respect him, give him his props for a great performance on that podcast, but don't venerate him. Don't make him to a god or some sort of deity, because he's not that. He's a regular man. And I think if you really want to show support to him, acknowledge his humanity, accept his flaws. Don't expect him to be perfect in order for you to continue to support him, because I wouldn't be surprised if in the coming weeks, Kevin Hart and his team members figure out a way to expose some dirt on Katt. I wouldn't be surprised at all. That's how the game goes in this day and age. So if some stuff comes out that you don't like about him, is that going to discredit everything he said? Are you going to still support him, or are you only supporting him because he's talking shit about people you don't really particularly like in the first place? So that's just a question. Listen, I don't mean to be the Debbie Downer. You guys are surprised about my reaction and my response to Katt Williams speaking to Shannon Sharpe. I'm surprised too. I thought that I'd be more excited about somebody speaking truth to power, somebody being a whistleblower about the boule and the gatekeepers in the industry. I'm an advocate for that 100,000%. But I didn't feel that here. I felt concerned for Katt. I felt like he was under the weight of a lot of stuff. And because of that, I could not enjoy what I saw. I didn't not enjoy it. It wasn't boring. I didn't feel angry or anything. It just wasn't as funny as I thought it would be not because he's not funny as a comedian. He's one of my favorite comedians. It's not that. I just could not look past the sadness in his eyes and his demeanor. He looks stressed. And he has lots of money. Nobody's saying he's broke. He's not broke. He's not struggling. But that's usually when the demons get stronger because now you got the money to feed them. You got the money to feed your vices, whatever they are. So they start to weigh you down even heavier. But shout out to him, for being a guardian angel for many comedians and even actors and actresses who needed support in the industry. Like a lot of Black people in Hollywood are struggling. And I've heard that he's helped so many of them out, which is a commendable thing. It's amazing. He's done a lot for the people around him. I wonder if people will still support him if it turns out that he has a lot of skeletons in his closet that are rough. Everybody or most people have skeletons in their closet. I'm just hoping that the support that they have, that Katt is being shown now, is not fleeting and it's not fickle and it's not superficial. And people are well informed about who he is as a person to the point where they won't be completely disillusioned by him if some other stuff comes out. When I watched the first 30 minutes of his commentary, my mind was like, am I watching a madman or am I watching a martyr? And I'm not saying that if he's a madman, he can't be a martyr. If he's a martyr, he can't be a madman too. And I mean mad as in insane to the point where he needs to be sedated, institutionalized, and discredited. I'm not saying that at all. But again, I honestly was kind of uncomfortable watching him and listening to him because it was like he was in his own world. And I can see that it's easy for him to get lost into the world of subjectivity and opinion and feelings and intuition and sensation and paranoia even. And so does he know the difference between reality and fantasy? Katt Williams is extremely sensitive. He's very sensitive to criticism. He's very sensitive to pushback. He's very sensitive to people who don't disagree with him. He's very sensitive, which usually means that he has a lot of insecurities and a lot of pain that he's going through. So it's like, if you don't agree with him, then again, he's flawed, he's wrong, he's being judged, he needs to be punished. And so he pushes back against that. He always has to be right, or he always has to defend himself, even when he doesn't need to. So when Shannon Sharpe was telling him to chill out about Faison Love, just cut him some slack, chill out. He was like, you have an unnatural allegiance to a loser or something like that, and that's not like you. It was funny what he said, but I'm like, isn't that serious? So it's like he can take something from 0 to 100 in a second. A part of me feels like he wasn't really enjoying himself. Like he was there to defend himself, but he wasn't enjoying himself. So it's hard for me to enjoy him being there because he wasn't having fun, right? He was good at what he did. He did a great presentation, great conversation, great talking points, very entertaining. But I feel like he was nervous or unnerved or uncomfortable because there were certain things that he didn't want to talk about. He's a very private person. And so, yeah. One more thing. I really appreciated the difference in the dialect between Shannon Sharpe and Katt Williams. Like, I missed the time when we had different dialects for different regions. Like, the Southwest had a dialect, the Midwest had a dialect, the Northeast had a dialect, the Southeast had a dialect, the West Coast has... Not everybody sounds the same. The social media, it's like people are speaking the same language or the same dialect, and they've lost the nuances and their tone and their cadence and their accents. And I really appreciated the contrast between Shannon Sharpe's Southern drawl and Katt Williams' Midwestern accent. It really showed the diversity in Black culture. I'm laughing because not only was there like a difference in the accents, but the size difference. Katt Williams is really tiny and Shannon Sharpe is not that tiny. I saw this contrast with Cam Newton and Charleston White also. It's like these little men with these big men, and the little men are always on 100. They're the most excited. They're the most irascible, animated. Katt Williams said he was going to punch somebody in the stomach. I think it was either Cedric the Entertainer or Faison Love. I don't know, but these little men, and it's not to disparage anybody. I'm a little myself. I don't know. It's funny for me to see these little men talking to these big men like this. You can see the contrast in the personalities. The big men are calm, cool, and collected and reserved, and the little men are on 100. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there, guys. If you want to tune into my Katt Williams chart analysis, that's going to be posted this week on Thursday on the membership tier. Thank you for listening. I look forward to reading your feedback. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will speak to you soon.